Hey, Bills Mafia. We know there's only one topic every day. All Bills, all the time. And now Matt Beauvais and Sal Capaccio are going really deep, talking Bills all year long, because it's always game day in Buffalo.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of It's Always Game Day in Buffalo. Matt Beauvais, Sal Capaccio joining you on our post-Combine recap. Now, if you're hearing this and you go, well, I thought the Combine just started. It kind of did, but the main portion of the Combine that we are interested in is the availability from the coaching staff and front office of the Buffalo Bills. So that is why Sal is back in studio. Capaccio, I'm in my basement, and we're going to talk to you about what we learned from the first couple days in Indianapolis. Full disclosure, I was not there. My colleague Dom Tibbetts was. I'm sure he got a lot of nice steak dinners out of it. Totally cool. I wanted to kind of lay low and hang back for a little bit. So shout out Dom for being able to kind of, carry the weight these last couple days. But Sal, did you take good care of them? Did you guys have fun?
Yeah. I'm going to tell you how much I took care of your buddy Dom. All right. I at least try to take care of him. My first night I was there, and I'm like, I'm going to go to St. Elmo's to get some shrimp cocktail, but I don't need to go and sit at a table, make reservations. A couple of our colleagues actually had reservations and told me, and I'm like, I'm going to go there. I hope they weren't just ignoring me, but no, they had made reservations a while back. So I got there. I found like 3 seats at the bar, which were hard to come by. And I'm like, who could I, see if around and, might want to join me. And I thought about you. So that got me to Dom. So I texted Dom. I'm like, hey buddy, just so you know, if you want, I got an extra seat here at St. Elmo's if you want to come and, hang out. So yeah, so I did that. He was not able to, but yes.
Okay. Well, hopefully he's not trying to posture himself in as the co-host on It's Always Game Day of Buffalo. Yeah. But I had major FOMO. I would anticipate, I knew that was going to happen. I was like, man, I feel like I'm missing stuff. But here's the thing, Sal, and I am not trying to, I guess, delegitimize it. I don't really feel like I missed anything. Well, I thought going into it, I was like, I'm going to have so much FOMO. And I think I had FOMO about the event, but not about missing anything newsworthy. Because I don't feel like anything really important or super interesting happened. At least that's my read on it.
Okay, so I like your take because you're not wrong. Because it kind of depends on what you mean by newsworthy and FOMO and missing content. We didn't get any real goods from Joe Brady and Brandon Beane other than kind of basic stuff, right? Nothing spicy that became a story that, oh my God, I can't believe you should have been there, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
A big reason I go to the Combine every year in the owners' meetings is all the stuff you get around that. You run into someone here, you run into someone there,
definitely.
Whether it's media from someone else, without name dropping. I ran into executives and coaches who used to be on the Bills that I know and ask them questions about what's going on with them or what they think about Buffalo and things like that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That night, I told you about it almost, I was sitting at the bar. I turn around. I see Jason Rebrovich, who's on the Bills staff still, talking with Nate Hackett. And then I look and John Fox was sitting with him.
Oh, there you go.
So I got up and introduced myself to John Fox. First time I did that. That's what I would have FOMO about. Those things that I would miss.
Yes.
You know what I mean? That's what I love about the Combine.
Like nothing, like every other industry. It's all relationships.
Yes.
It's relationships. And even though football is so big, when you're in Indianapolis, you realize how small it also can be at the exact same time, because it's incredible who you just randomly will be bumping into and the conversations that you have that could potentially lead to something down the road. And when I say potentially lead to something down the road, I don't mean like a scoop or like breaking a news. I mean like it helps you connect the dots of things you were trying to figure out. And it's just good information to have in your back pocket when you were trying to rack your brain about okay, what could be happening in a certain situation? Or why did this ultimately play out the way it did? So I feel like that's where it really comes, there's a ton of value.
Yeah.
They're just also, these last couple of years have been newsworthy things that have happened while there, like on the record thing, like the difference between an on the record bit and an off the record bit. On the record, they signed Khalil Shakir last year. That turned into a thing. Or Leslie Frasier stepping away from the team. nothing quite like that happened. I mean, heck, I don't know. I think maybe the biggest thing I learned from all of the interviews was maybe Taron Johnson plays safety. That might be like the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, for sure. So Taron Johnson, Dawson Knox, we'll get into all that. I will also tell you that, years ago, the combine was different for most of us who covered the team because the Bills were picking high. It's just not this anymore. So, like, I'm home today. I'm in Studio Capaccio, right? You can see that. And part of the reason is I don't need to be there for the prospects. I don't know who the Bills are going to draft. I'm not even like focused on a certain position. Do I think wide receivers on the table? Absolutely. Do I think safety is? Sure. Linebacker? No doubt. You could talk me into all of that. But they pick 26. They might not even pick. So, like, Matt, this is the season of did you meet with what people ask the kid, the prospect. You meet with this team, that team, and half the podium session is spent like that. Each team gets 45 interviews. I could ask 100 prospects, did you meet with the Bills? I'm going to get almost half of them to tell me yes. It doesn't.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. Yeah. So I don't get as much from that anymore. I don't really care about the prospects as opposed to years ago. What I care about is the Brady and Beane thing. And I will say this as we're on all together. Okay. I give credit to Bills PR. I really do, because I have heard horror stories about other teams not getting really much access to their guys, to their head coach, to their general manager. Some get great access, some don't. Not only do the Bills obviously have Joe Brady and Brandon Beane at the podium, which some teams don't do any of that with their head coach or GM or one or the other, then they take both of them and all you TV folk get a one-on-one interview, and all of us radio or print get to do a scrum after that with them. That's a double dose of both of them. And I think that's really good by the Bills to do that for us.
Definitely. And actually, I think that is why I am so interested to hear what you have to say, because once again, in this instance, I am a consumer. So I am watching from the outside looking in, and I saw my colleague Dom's one-on-one with Joe Brady and with Brandon Beane. I saw the press conference with both of them. The press conferences are more filled with questions that people outside of Buffalo are asking for things that they're working on. People are asking Brandon Beane about what it's like going to a Georgia pro day, and people are asking him questions about random, and that's totally within their right because they now have access to the president and general manager of the Bills. But because Dom did his one-on-one, that scrum with Beane that happened for you guys afterwards, I'm trying to read what my colleagues are writing and see what people are, saying, but there's only so much I can take into it. That's why I'm excited to kind of pick your brain, because even for me, there's a lot of stuff that I'm sure that was said there that I'm not aware of right now.
Okay. The one really juicy thing that did happen is still a mystery to a lot of us. Okay. So we're at the podium. Brandon Beane is at the podium, and we're all gathered around. How many people at these podiums watching? 30 maybe, right?
Yeah.
Media members from all different organizations. And this is a national and other market type of situation where you're going to get a lot of questions from other markets or national people. For example, Brandon Beane's been asked this almost every year by a team with a reporter that has a younger quarterback. Hey, what was it like, the development of Josh Allen? Why did it work for you guys? Which is a great question. I get it. This year it was somebody from Tennessee because Brian Dable is there now with Cam Ward. Great question. I totally understand why someone would ask that to Brandon Beane. What went into that? They're going to try and say, okay, well, here's our guy. Somebody towards the end, I don't know if you heard this or not, towards the back, I'm sitting right in the front. I'm standing, I should say, right in the front. Somebody says, after having a month to reflect on it, why do you think Sean McDermott got fired and you got a promotion? And then the person hightailed it out and nobody knows who it was.
Yeah.
Nobody knows who it was. We were trying to figure it out. And then I think it was Tim Graham who said he actually looked and the person's credential was turned around. He couldn't see the name, and the person left. Nobody knows who it was who asked that question.
Okay.
It was not a Buffalo media member, because all of us know each other's voices.
I heard Brandon at the podium say, could you repeat that? And then give that was a Terry Pagula decision. And then I believe there was only one question after that. So I couldn't hear exactly what was asked, but I kind of pieced together by the reaction to it that it was something along those lines. So yeah, I guess it's the great mystery. The combine, some weird stuff happens at the combine that I don't like because there are so many media members. A couple of years ago, I was having a conversation off to the side with it's obviously it's not that significant because I don't even remember the details. I was having a conversation with somebody, and then that conversation was tweeted by a reporter who covers the Atlanta Falcons. And he was like, a Buffalo media member and insert person here were talking about how they don't want this to happen and they think it would be a bad idea. I didn't even know who the guy was. And I was like, so I went and found him. I was like, why did you post this? And he was like, oh, I thought it was funny. I was like, I don't think it comes across like funny. I think it comes across like we were having a conversation and you posted it to your 46,000 followers. Like, that's not cool. So the guy deleted it. I've never seen the person again.
Wow.
But yeah, like, you get some like weird nonsense that happens in a situation like this.
That is wild. And then stuff happens away from the actual combine and even the steakhouses. For example, I get on my flight today and I see a guy walking with, he's got the new era combine gear on. I'm like, oh, this kid was, he did something. He worked out at the combine, but man, all we really got was punters and kickers yesterday. And then today did he go early? And then the guy behind him has a Syracuse backpack with number 41. I'm like, oh, there's only one Syracuse guy here. That's Jack Stonehouse, the punter.
Yeah.
So he happens to sit right in front of me.
Did you say go orange to him?
No. I tapped him. I said, didn't you just kick this morning? And he goes, no, that was yesterday. And he kind of looked at me puzzled. And I said, I'm Sal Capaccio. I work at WGR in Buffalo. I also went to Syracuse. He's like, oh, we started talking. And then I said, Bills need a punter. Did you meet with the Bills? Yeah, we met. Good visit. All right, good. But again, there you go. I'm sure they met with a lot of guys. The other, I don't know the guy's last name. The other punter he was with was a kid from Michigan State. He also met with the Bills. Not a surprise. They're going to meet with all these people, but it is interesting. They do need a punter, and I wonder if they would draft one because they went through a bunch last year, but they only have a limited number of draft picks. But it is on the table this year, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Do you remember last year while we were in the hallway, Oronde Gadsden was doing his 40-yard dash training, and then he just kind of happened to be on our video, so you asked him a question, and then he had a really nice rookie year. Like,
he did
made plays and was somebody that was fantasy football relevant. And I was like, oh yeah,
oh my
like,
god, yeah. So you never know. You never
we
know.
Had
what
a
happens.
random. Yeah, I think that's the thing. That's one of the other elements about this that's cool. Like, I see a Red Murdoch, the linebacker for UB, who is at the combine, and he's getting a shine, and the local stations are doing stories on him and all that stuff. I think that's a really cool experience for somebody like him, right? Like somebody who's probably going to get drafted, but it's not a slam dunk. A lot of these guys going to the combine know they're getting drafted. For some of them, though, this is such a critical week to prove that they are worthy of the risk and that they deserve to be taken.
No doubt. One more story about this kind of stuff, which is great. It really underscores Matt's point about relationships, right? So I'm checking out of my hotel today, and in front of me are two gentlemen checking in. And I'm wearing, sorry, Matt, I'm wearing my Bills Kickoff Live jacket from when I do with Josh Reed, okay? Yeah, sorry, I know. Matt's Channel 7. But anyway, I'm wearing that. The guy turns around and he goes, Bills. I say, yeah. He goes, and I'm not going to tell you the name, blanked agent. And this player is going to be a free agent for the Bills. And I said, oh, really? He said, yeah. And we started talking. And I said, and then he goes, I think I follow you on Twitter. I'm like, oh, yeah. We started talking, blah, 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 blah. And I got some good, useful info. And I said, hey, what's your number? Give me your number. And we exchanged numbers. It was great. And that's a contact, right? That's how you develop, folks. That's how you develop sources. Random run-ins with people, but just be authentic, say hello, introduce yourself. And I could tell you this, Matt Bove is one of the best at it too. Like, we're both Italian guys. We're gregarious with people. We like to talk to people, but it's authentic, having relationships. But that was just a cool interaction that happened very randomly as I was leaving.
You know, what's funny is, thank you, by the way, for the compliment.
Yeah.
There is a notable player who's going to be a free agent that I almost think we could just text and say, like, hey, are you staying with the Bills? Are you leaving? And they might respond. So I don't think that's going to be a conversation for today or for this episode. But maybe also, if you're listening to this or watching this, read between the lines when we have some of these conversations the next couple of days when we're like, oh, I think that guy's leaving. I think they can't afford David Edwards, or I don't know what they're going to do with Connor McGovern. Like, sometimes we're not just saying it to say it.
Yeah, that's 100% right. There's things that we just kind of have to keep protected close to the vest, because if you say it the way everybody wants you to say it and tell everything, you don't get that information anymore, and people don't trust you anymore. And this business, and as well as most things in life, are built on trust. Okay, so I wrote an article at WGR550.com about the 5 takeaways I had from Brandon Beane and Joe Brady. So I'll start there and kind of let you piggyback a little bit off some of these things.
Okay.
First of all, something has to be done with Dawson Knox's contract. We knew that, but Brandon Beane acknowledged it. That was a takeaway, which is, excuse me, he said that number's a little high, $17 million. It's a large number, a tough number is what he called it, a tough number. He also said he's had contact with Dawson since the season ended. They went right away, started talking. He's a good relationship with his agent. It's about honest conversations. So here's the deal, Matt. It comes down to this. Dawson Knox won't be on the Bills for a $17 million cap hit next year.
Yeah.
He might be on the Bills for a lower cap hit, or he might not be on the Bills. What do you think?
I think he's on the Bills for a much lower cap hit. I think that's what ultimately is going to play out. This is just more of a hunch. I think with a young family, with a wife who is from Buffalo, with Josh Allen is legitimately one of his best friends, I think to Dawson Knox, it would be more valuable to play for the Bills for $5 million than it would to be playing for the Tennessee Titans for $8 million. Actually, Tennessee's a really bad example because he's from Nashville. So that's a bad example. The Vegas Raiders, like just another team. I think if that was up to him, he would choose to stay in Buffalo. So that is why I think he is back. I also think he is a bigger piece and leader and factor off of the fields than we probably ever give him credit for.
Oh my God. I mean, last year, Sean McDermott was asked in the season ending press conference, is there a player on the team that you really kind of meant a lot to you? And he said Dawson Knox, right? I mean, what he meant. And then remember what happened with Dalton Kincaid at the end of the year last year, the play in Kansas City at the end of the game. And I guess, Dawson was somebody that Dalton really leaned on, right? And it meant a lot. And he was honest with him and had good conversations. And I agree with you. I also think on the field, he was much better than a lot of people may have anticipated he would be. He had a solid season, I would call it. 36 catches, 417 yards, 4 touchdowns. Matt, but if he's not on the team, I still think you need to replace him. I don't think Jackson Hawes is that guy.
No.
Because especially if Dalton Kincaid gets banged up, you don't have a guy that at least you can trust to run the right routes and be in the right spots for Josh Allen and catch passes.
So coincidentally, today on our website, WKBW.com, I wrote a list of 10 players I think the Bills should target in free agency. So I spent a lot of the morning researching free agents at a lot of different positions. I glanced over tight end because I don't think it's going to be something that they invest a lot of money or resources into. However, if they move on from Dawson Knox, one of the names that stood out to me was, I wonder if they'd be interested in David Njoku, just because he does a lot of things well. He's been a solid player. You don't know what you have with Dalton Kincaid from an injury standpoint going into every year, but it feels a little rich. And if that feels a little rich, that means definitely what Dawson Knox is scheduled to make is way too rich.
Let's talk about the financials, because here's the other part of this, though. And I think that you bring up really valid points here. Let's just say they did release Dawson Knox a regular cut, not a post June 1 cut, which makes it even different. Let's just say they did. They can save $9.6 million, which is huge. They'd also be taking on $7.4 million in dead cap money. How close to $9 million a year is David Njoku going to make?
Close.
So what's the difference?
Yeah.
Because you'd be paying him literally the money you're saving and still counting the $7 million for Dawson.
Well, you know what? I shouldn't say close, because that's high for a tight end, but it's probably...
You might save only really in the end. What's the wash? 3-4 million, which is something. I get it.
Yes.
But it's not nearly the $9 million you're saving by just moving on from Dawson Knox.
No. And once again, like, I think David Njoku has a higher ceiling than what Dawson Knox does for sure. But I don't think that they would want to rock the boat in a room. Like, there's a reason that tight ends coach is still here when there are a lot of departures. There's a reason Dalton Kincaid is getting the 5th-year option. They really like Jackson Hawes. I think that's a room they want to keep as close or as similar next year as possible to what it was this year. And that's why, like, I think Dawson Knox is back, but I think Dawson Knox is going to be back for a substantially lower cap hit.
Yeah, I agree.
What could they realistically do, though? What do you think they do? They give him an extension?
Well, they could. So what I think is you could either extend him. He has 2 void years in his contract. So he's a free agent because the 2 void years just basically spread out the money. But you could give him a 1-year extension and put another void year on top of that instead then. And then you're really kind of saying, okay, we'll give you 1 extra year to spread the money out. So lower that $17 million down. Or honestly, I bet you they're just talking about a pay cut. Then this comes, does he want to take one? I think that comes down to that then.
You never know. This is life-changing money. We talk about it very willy-nilly. Like 5 minutes ago, I was like, oh, I bet he'd rather play for $5 million in Buffalo than $8 million elsewhere. Think about that. Think about having so much money that $3 million is insignificant. But I shouldn't say it that much because that is a life-changing amount of money for somebody. So that's why, like, imagine somebody coming to you, watching this, listening to this. Your boss is like, I need you to take a pay cut. That wouldn't feel good.
No.
That wouldn't be something that you would want to hear. I understand that he's probably able to do it a lot easier than a lot of people on this planet, but it still doesn't feel good. Like, I know that you want to stay here, but I also don't think he wants to feel like he's not valued. That's just human nature.
And Brandon Beane acknowledged that. He just said, like, everybody wants to feel respected too. He said, yeah, he joked and said, I'd love if everybody said, I'll take a pay cut to the minimum. But he said, everybody wants to feel respected. So, it's a fine line there for any, balancing that relationship. All right. Number 2 takeaway, like you with tight end, where you kind of glanced over it. I have never given any serious thought to Taron Johnson moving to safety, but fans have brought it up a lot. So it was asked to Brandon Beane, what do you think about it? And his answer kind of surprised me. He did not rule it out. He said, nothing's off the table. Now, to me, his answer though, Matt, was not because, Taron didn't have as good of a year last year. He's getting older. By the way, him, Dawson, and Josh Allen, all 30 years old this year, right? They're all the same age. So it's not super old. I know it's different for Josh, but they're not super old. But his answer did make me go, okay, I get it now a little bit more, which is, you're paying a guy a lot of money who's a good football player, but his role probably is so diminished in the new defense. Is it worth having him, or can you find another spot for him to play? I think that's really what this is about.
But here's my question. And this is another conversation. At what he's going to make, you could go out and get a player who actually plays safety and who has played safety. So they need to figure out, do they think that is a seamless transition, and can he thrive there? This isn't just about treading water. He's going to get paid a lot of money next year. So if you move him to safety, he's going to be a very high-paid safety. You need him to produce like a high-paid safety because that's a big chunk of the money you're spending on defense.
The problem is you save not much money by cutting Taron Johnson, less than $2 million.
It's only a post-June 1 thing.
He would have to be post-June 1. Let me explain post-June 1 to everybody in case they know. In case you don't know, when we hear post-June 1, that's just for financial purposes. The player would be released before free agency. He would be a free agent immediately, starting on the new league year on March 11th. But the Bills would not get the money they're saving until June 1st. Yeah, that's why it's tough also.
And then at that point, I don't want to say you're bargain shopping, but you kind of are. It's the players that are still available, because if they are really good, people are going to throw them really good money early on. I mean, most big name free agents are signed within the first week, unless there's an injury that's kind of lingering and teams are trying to figure out more stuff. And, there will be more players who are cut down the road. So you want to give yourself a little wiggle room for something like that. But if you're looking for a true impact player, 90% of that time that comes before June 1st.
The third takeaway I have and wrote about at WGR550.com was, this is not a surprise. This isn't like earth-shattering news. Joe Brady's going to let Jim Leonhard run the defense. Yes. Oh, of course he is. Well, listen, he's a head coach, right? And what did we talk about with Sean McDermott? As a defensive head coach, there was a lot of talk that he had a lot of say over in how the offense ran, right? What the philosophy of the offense is. That is not happening at all from Joe Brady. He made it clear. He said, and here's what I'll say, how I'll put it. He said one of the biggest changes for him as a head coach is sitting in on defensive meetings. But the reason he's doing it, he said, I want to learn the language. I want to know what he's calling. I want to know what he's talking about. He basically said, though, when it comes time for a critical play, critical down, I want to hear what's going on, what he's doing. He ain't calling the plays. He ain't telling them what to call. And I think Bills fans kind of want to hear that after having debates over the last few years of how much Sean McDermott had a hand at all in the offense.
I don't want to skip ahead. Now, I do not have your list in front of me. Are any of your final 2 points about John Fox? Because I'm going to bring up a John Fox point.
They are not, but it's a great point to bring up because we did talk a lot about him. Go ahead.
So my John Fox point is, I didn't even realize it at the time, but John Fox is kind of a double whammy because he gives Joe Brady the head coaching experience, but he also gives Jim Leonhard the defensive-minded experience and all of those reps defensively. So it's a double dip. So when you were just talking there about Joe Brady and him wanting to sit in with Jim Leonhard, I bet Jim Leonhard also wants John Fox to have a hand in some of the things that they are trying to do defensively. And I know John Fox is an older guy. He's not a trendy, exciting, young defensive mind, but he's been around the block and he knows NFL defense. And I think that combined with the trendy, young, exciting NFL minds that is Jim Leonhard is a really, really promising outlook for the Bills defense.
I really like that point. A couple things on John Fox. Number one, Brandon Beane said something funny. He said they had a staff meeting. I don't know who was in. Like, I don't know what he meant by staff. What was just coaches or executives and scouts? And he's basically like telling about John Fox. And he said, who here knows who Chuck Noll is? He said some people didn't know who Chuck Noll was. I'm like, what? And the reason is because John Fox came up through Chuck Noll. It's amazing, right? I mean, Chuck Noll was the Pittsburgh Steelers coach before Bill Cowher, folks. I mean, like, pretty crazy, right? Other thing about John Fox. Speaking of him, guess who else we ran into this week? Sitting at Harry and Izzy's, having our dinner, comes walking. I go, oh my God, thank God. I wanted to see him so bad this week. Speaking
Brian
of John,
Dable.
No, you're close though. You're close. You're on the right track a little bit. One of our favorite people who's been with the Buffalo Bills as a coach over the last, 6-7 years, but no longer with the Bills.
Babbage?
Leslie Frazier.
Oh, what a guy.
Oh
what
my God.
What a guy.
You should coach. You see the smile on his face. He comes over.
Sal. That's a
my
great question,
God.
Sal.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. He always made you feel so good. You could butcher
and I'm like,
something.
You know what was cool?
Like,
Congratulating him, right? He won a Super Bowl again. Now he's got one as a player and a coach. I mean, incredible.
That's very cool. That's very cool. Good for him. Leslie Frazier, all-time good guy. Everybody likes Leslie Frazier.
Yeah, that's right. And don't forget, here we go. Dutch Flats, Chuck Noll, 4 rings. That's right. I mean, won 4 Super
I could
Bowls.
tell you nothing about Chuck Noll.
But you know who he is.
I know who he is. I could tell you I didn't know that he had 4 rings. I just
you didn't know he was the Steelers coach for the 4 Super Bowls in the 70s?
I would have known. I knew.
See, there you go. And I think it sounds funny for someone to go, they didn't know who Chuck Noll was. But I'm like, well, I don't know. A lot of people would because he coached so long ago.
When did he stop coaching?
80, 89, 90? So because that's when Bill Cowher took over.
It's before I was born.
90,
so like
92 maybe? Whenever Cowher took over, early 90s. I can't remember the
It's a little trippy now that I see all of the Hall of Fame classes that are currently coming out, and it's now the generation of players I grew up watching, which is cool because I know how great they were.
Yeah.
But this is the generational divide when I hear people talk about football players and coaches of yesteryear, where I'm like, yeah, I've heard they're great, but I never watched them play live. It's such a different game that YouTube clips can only show you so much.
Yeah, there's still some of them for me, but the more we go on, you're gonna know a lot more of these guys, and you'll be telling these stories to people.
Yeah, I know.
Coming up at Channel 7, these young pups that you guys hire. All right. Okay, this is a big one. Okay, this is it's the number 4 on my list takeaway, but it was a big deal. This is like a newsworthy item from the combine. What Brandon Beane said about Keon Coleman, and the reason I say it's newsworthy, nothing earth-shattering, nothing with player movement, what they're doing, not doing, but he's been a topic this offseason, as we know, right, Matt?
Mm-hmm.
And once again, Brandon Beane and Joe Brady pumped up Keon Coleman, showed confidence in Keon Coleman. I believe that they're doing that to keep his value high. And sure, he could still be on the team, and that's why. I still believe there's certainly a scenario where they move off Keon Coleman this offseason. I do not think it's a slam dunk. Keon Coleman is on this roster, and especially because Brandon Beane even acknowledged he can't let the immaturity issues off the field get in the way of what's going on the field. He's still acknowledging that. They don't know if he's going to be able to kind of stay on that line.
Somebody says, Matt, stop acting like you in your 20s. I'm early 30s. I want to make that very clear. I do agree with you. Now, I don't know what Brandon said about Keon in the scrum after the press conference.
Nothing really.
But what he said about Keon during the press conference immediately ticked in my brain of like, show you a little bit of the workflow. I was like, what's going to be the first thing that I clip as a video and post on social media? Because I think a lot of people will react to it. That was the clip. Him saying Keon Coleman needs to basically be more mature, and it's getting in the way on the field. That's not something that somebody says lightly. So for him to say the off the field stuff is getting in the way of the on the field stuff is not nothing. I also thought it was interesting, though, how much he leaned into what they liked about his offseason last year.
Yes.
And now how somehow that all went away after the Ravens game.
Can I make the point too that when he said he needs to have a really good offseason like last year, there was a pretty kind of negative reaction for the fan base. Oh, he didn't have a great offseason. He wasn't that great in training camp. He was fine in training camp. He wasn't like a super stud, but he wasn't terrible. I think he did have a good offseason. And because folks, you have to stop thinking about the offseason as just preseason games or training camp. He even specifically mentioned Brandon Beane, phase 1, phase 2, showing up for workouts, doing the work, getting with his position coach, the route running. I remember going on Chopin the Bulldog last year and saying this word. When Bulldog asked me, what do you think about Keon Coleman's offseason? I said, I think he's been very intentional. And I still hold to that. Ironically, Joe Brady used the same word, not because I said it, but just the same word about a few weeks later, because it seemed intentional. He was very dialed in. He had a great week 1, and then things started to fall apart shortly after that. Let's put the puzzle together, Matt. You have the owner at that press conference saying Keon was, coaches. And I think that was a clear kind of, they wanted that out there. Like Keon Coleman, by now we know that Keon Coleman wasn't necessarily Brandon Beane's choice. And now Sean McDermott's gone. And even though Joe Brady is the head coach, you get to this point and he says that. That's why I say, to me, it's 50-50. He's even on the team in 2026.
Wow. But 50-50 is a lot higher than this was.
Than I would have given
2 weeks ago when we were talking about this. So I think I lean 60-40 that he's back, just because I don't know what the value for him would even be. And I don't think at that point it's worth it. If you told me somebody's willing to give you a 4th round pick for Keon Coleman, I think you're taking that. I think you're cutting your loss and you're going for it.
How about if you just if you're Brandon Beane, are you looking for draft capital, or are you looking to package him with maybe something of your own draft to get an established guy in here?
Oh, of course. That's definitely
okay.
You hope that he can be a sweetener to a deal that you are trying to make that tries to get it over the edge.
Yeah.
But once again, how many times we saw a football trade today between the Titans and the Jets? We're recording this on Thursday. That was cool. I mean, somebody put this in the comments, and I know this is going off course a little bit. If somehow, some way, the Jets are willing to trade Garrett Wilson, and you're like, hey, we'll give you a 1st and a 2nd, and they're like, nah, that's still not enough. Then you're like, okay, and Keon Coleman. That, to me, is when you move on from a player, not just, hey, the Saints are offering you a 6th for Keon Coleman. I don't think you do that for the sake of just doing it.
5th takeaway I had was actually more just kind of a house cleaning item when it came to Brandon Beane. I asked him to give an update on some injured players. Unfortunately, I forgot to ask about Dwayne Carter, but I would say he'd probably give the same answer here, where he's not going to give a timeline. But interestingly, he did say Tyler Bass is more ahead of where Landon Jackson and Michael Hoyt are. Now, that doesn't mean any of them won't be ready at a certain point. He didn't want to put a timeline, but he did say Tyler Bass is the furthest along of that group. And I do wonder about Tyler Bass's future. They could save money moving on from Tyler Bass. I feel like they don't really want to do that, though, especially because they're going to have to find a punter as well this year.
It's a good point. It's a really good point. They save what, $3.5 million if they move on from Tyler Bass, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, and he's been, look, I know he's missed a couple of kicks, but he's been pretty good in a Bills uniform overall.
Yeah, he has been pretty good. I think you immediately think of the bad when it comes to a kicker, probably before you think of a good. So everybody will go to that missed kick against the Chiefs in the playoffs. And yeah, I understand. Like, that's when you need to make those kicks. You need to make those plays. It's tricky though, because these kickers in college keep getting better and better, and the range keeps. He was,
and you don't have to use a draft pick on them either. You could bring guys in; they're undrafted.
Yeah, I mean, he was kind of this before this became a thing, where it's like, oh, Tyler Bass can make one from 60, and you're like, no way. Yeah. And now it feels like every kid that's kicking in college at the big schools is capable of doing that. I think he's back, but I don't say that with a ton of confidence.
It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. He spoke with us on Locker Cleanout Day. He said he was feeling good, and he was very confident he'd be back on track and be able to come back and play. I also asked Joe Brady about Josh Allen and his foot surgery and injury. He said, if there's one guy I'm not going to worry about, is Josh Allen, meaning, he'll be out there when it comes time to be out there, and that's pretty soon from all indications. So it shouldn't really impact his offseason too much. A name that came up that I did not – this was not on my bingo card. This guy's name for Brandon Beane to kind of bring up kind of unprompted wasn't on my bingo card. Javon Solomon. And I'm going to tell you the context. I don't know if you know this. Joe Buscaglia, you're leading the charge, co-host there, to give you a little plug.
Thank you.
Athletic. Joe Biscaglia said he asked Brandon about Greg Rousseau. And I think it was in this particular conversation, if I remember right. And then Sal Marana or somebody else asked about archetypes, the kind of guys you want. You've had these long arm, longer guys on the edge, but now you're going with this different defense. So all of that was kind of baked into this.
Mm-hmm.
And Brandon Beane, kind of unprompted, said, when we drafted Javon Solomon, we thought he might have been a better 3-4, but we really liked him anyway. And I'm like, okay, you're telling me you like Javon Solomon in this defense.
Yeah, definitely. That's interesting. It doesn't shock me, but even if you like him in a 3-4 like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
They still need to probably add 2 or 3 more guys to be truly impactful players, right?
I mean, where are you to add them? You're not moving on from Rousseau. You still have Michael Hoyt. You have Javon Solomon. You're not moving on from Landon Jackson after 1 year. That's 4 right there.
Yeah, but that's kind of it, right?
And if you're playing a 3-4, you could kick out Deion Walker, TJ Sanders, and Ed Oliver. All of them could kick out to the outside. But Arian Mathis, you literally have 7 guys who could play that, who could kick out a little bit.
Yeah, this is more of a defense, obviously very different. This is more of kind of a defensive tackle conversation, but in my mind, they need to replace Daquan Jones, Larry Ogunjobi, Jordan Phillips, AJ Epinesa, and Joey Bosa. So that's 5 names who I feel pretty confident in saying. I don't think any of them are back, and they were all guys who got a lot of snaps. Now, I understand different scheme, things will change. I think maybe you still need to get, if it's not 5, it's 3, right?
Sure. And they're going to have to add. There's no doubt about it. And I think for what Jim Leonhard wants to do, you look at what the Broncos did with the guys they have. I mean, he needs to find guys that are twitchy, get off the ball fast. I was talking I did a podcast, my own side podcast, Sal's House, with my buddy Brandon Cristall, covers the Broncos. He's really good. And he said, one of the traits of Jim Leonhard's and Vance Joseph's defense, they love guys who have really good ball get off. Yeah. And I thought that was really interesting. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna start looking at those numbers now. Right. And I think, you're right. I mean, they're going to have to find guys that, bam, you're getting off the ball real quick and you're getting off that edge.
Well, that's why when I made my list today, one of the players that I targeted for the Bills that I think would make a lot of sense is a John Franklin Myers, who was in Denver with Jim Leonhard.
He brought him up. That's a great point.
Just, versatility. What is he? I don't know. He's a defensive lineman. Right. He plays defensive end. He plays defensive tackle. He can do a little bit of everything. He's got a really good pressure rate. He's going to get a lot of money. But I think he immediately comes in and is probably he's going to have a substantial role on this team. So, yeah, there's a lot of different flavors of the type of player the Bills could be looking for kind of on that side of the ball. I feel like Javon Solomon has untapped potential, but I don't want to bet too much on Javon Solomon.
No, I agree. I just think that my point
was,
was I would look at the roster and go, yeah, they'll move on from Javon Solomon. I'm not in that camp as much anymore at all.
Yeah. So that's good. But this is tricky because now you have what happens to Landon Jackson? Is this a better or worse situation for him? What happens to a Dwayne Carter? How does he respond coming off of an injury? And what do they do with that type of player? So they got a lot of things that they need to figure out. And linebacker is something that we're not talking enough about. They got a lot of stuff they need to figure out at linebacker.
You know what's interesting to me about that? I don't disagree with you. I mean, but I do think, and I've said this, I think Terrell Bernard, this could benefit him. I think Terrell Bernard might be more suited for inside linebacker. Now, here's the big question. Do you think Dorian Williams can play next to him and is a quality starter, or do you have to find somebody different? I think you can make an argument either way. He's actually had a nice 3 years in Buffalo playing the role he's played. And he's, I think, ascended every year that he's played. But is he a 17-game starter at inside linebacker? And to be quite honest with you, I was talking with a couple of people at the Combine who said, Joe Andreessen is actually better suited to play 3-4 inside linebacker than 4-3 Mike. You have a nice quality player there. I'm not, again, maybe not a 17-game starter, but your linebacker might look a little better than you think right now.
I don't know if it does, though. I agree with you in what you're saying, but I still, in my mind, am thinking of a Joe Andreessen as a depth piece, which is a really good player to have. Dorian Williams, I don't know on. But you still need 2 more guys who are probably going to play a big chunk of snaps. And Leo Chenal is the name that you brought up when we did it almost feels
he's
like
still my number one, by the way. I think he's still the number one guy that I think the Bills, like if you said, what free agent are they going to sign? That's my number one.
I don't disagree with you. It makes a ton of sense. You know, he was another person that I put on my list because I was going back to the Wisconsin stuff with Jim Leonhard. And I was like, oh yeah, like it is funny how there's a relationship there.
Who'd you put on your list? I'm curious of this list. Can you share the list?
Yeah, I can share the list. You can.
Did you have PJ Locke on there?
I did not.
I think PJ Locke should be on this list.
Guess some of the guys I have on my list.
John Franklin Myers should be on this list.
I said him.
Alex Singleton.
Alex Singleton is not on this list.
I'm going Broncos, 3 Broncos in a row there, right? I mean,
there's no more Broncos on the list. All right.
Okay. Wait. This isn't just defense, is it?
No, it's offense.
Michael Pierce, of course.
Alec Pierce.
I'm thinking Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, of course.
Alec Pierce is on the list, of course.
Yeah. By the way, my Uber driver today to the airport. Okay, this is a wild one. Picks me up, gets out. He goes, and I'm wearing that jacket with the logo. Bills guy. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, he's got a full-fledged Steelers jacket on. I'm like, you're Steelers. He goes, no, I'm actually a Colts fan. I'm like, why are you wearing a Steelers jacket? He said, well, he picked it up to the local Goodwill, and nothing wrong with that. And he goes, I thought it was a Pacers jacket because of the colors, so I didn't care.
That's funny.
I'm like, that's
great.
Colors. Yeah. Anyway, but he did say to me though, I started talking about the Colts and about Pittman and Pierce. He's like, he goes, I do not want to lose Pierce. He said, Pittman I can deal with. He said, I'd much rather have Pierce, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, it feels like that's the way they're trending. All right, here's the list. Read the full thing on our website. That's the plug. Okay. First name on my list, Mike Evans. Okay. I have made the argument for Mike Evans. You just made it look like you don't think Mike Evans.
I think he's going to cost quite a bit, and I'm not interested in paying Mike Evans at that age that much when I might be able to get way more bang for my buck. But I like the player a lot. That's the thing that I get a little bit, twisted on.
Here's my pushback to that, and this is a good, healthy conversation. You say you think you could get more bang for your buck with a younger player. That's kind of the thought behind it.
If I have to pay Alec Pierce even like $3-4 million more than Mike Evans, I'm doing it.
Definitely. I don't even think that they're probably in the same ballpark.
Because Mike Evans is still a $20 million player, isn't he?
He's probably like 17.
Okay, well, yeah, I just think he's gonna get a lot of money.
My point is the chances they have taken on these young guys with upside have been Joshua Palmer and Curtis Samuel. And how have those worked out for them up to this point? I mean, we're talking about players that made decent, good money.
I mean, but they're totally. Yes. I mean, what are you talking about to compare those with Romeo Dobbs? You want to go out and get him? He could be like
Romeo Dobbs is the next name on the list, Sal. Well done. See? So my explanation for Romeo Dobbs was if you can't get an Alec Pierce, it's like you go to the dealership and you want to buy a Lexus and they're all sold out. So you go, you know what? The Camry does the same thing. It gets me from point A to point B. That's what I think about Romeo Dobbs. I go, really nice, solid player. I don't think he's a number 1, but I think he's a number 2. And all things considered, guess how many targets he had last year? This was surprising to me.
Did he play a full year?
I think he missed 1 game.
80 targets.
So he had 85. And the reason I say that is because I was like, oh, that's a lot. I look at the Bills. Shakir led them by a lot with 95 targets, and it felt like they were only throwing to Shakir in a lot of games. So it's like 85, relatively speaking, is a lot. All right, those are my only 3 wide receivers.
Okay.
Then I go to one more offensive person, and it's an offensive line. Let's see if you can guess it.
Offensive lineman. You'd have to be an interior guy.
Yep.
Not one of their own, then, you're saying.
Sort of, kind of, but not really.
Oh, Wyatt Teller.
Wyatt Teller, yes. I put Wyatt Teller as like hey, if David Edwards, you are priced out of David Edwards and you still want to keep a veteran option there, maybe you go back to Wyatt Teller. Okay. All right, defensively, we've talked about John Franklin Myers. We've talked about Leo Chenal. The biggest name and the biggest financial commitment on this list, who would it be? Defense.
You talking safety now?
No.
Okay, so
like maybe the highest paid.
Wow, Trey Hendrickson.
Yes, Trey Hendrickson.
I'm good at guessing your list.
You are. Trey Hendrickson to me is interesting, and it's an interesting thought exercise because you could go one of two ways here. You could say there's no way the Bills will sign a pass rusher over 30 to big money. Look what happened to Von Miller. Or you could say, yeah, look what happened with Von Miller before he got hurt. And by the way, Trey Hendrickson is 2 years younger than Von Miller was when Von Miller signed with the Bills. So Trey Hendrickson's still 31 years old. He'll be 31 for all of next year, basically.
I said the same thing about Joey Bosa, though. He's still pretty young.
I like the Trey Hendrickson idea.
I do too. Trey Hendrickson's a nice player. He is a nice player.
The last time he played a full season, he had 17 and a half sacks. That was 2024. We're not talking about, he did it 5 years ago. He was the second voted defensive player of the year in 2024.
We asked for some questions, so I want to.
Oh, I have three more, excuse me.
Yeah, sorry. I thought you were done with your list, but go right ahead.
That was just like a dramatic, like, oh my God, he's still good. Boye Mafe, linebacker, edge rusher, Seattle Seahawks. He's a name that I think makes a lot of sense. DJ Reader, defensive tackle from the Detroit Lions. Once again, I just think that they need bodies at defensive tackle. I don't think DJ Reader is going to be a very expensive player at this point in his career. And then the final name I have is Caden Ellis, the linebacker from the Atlanta Falcons, who had 107 tackles last year. Just a really good, smart, versatile player who can do a lot of things. So that was another guy I had.
Okay. Sorry about that. At Matt_Bove, at Sal Sports. We asked for some questions, and I'm getting you.
Somebody says I got to be Mike Evans' agent at this point. He's 33, dog. That's funny.
All right. Oh, here's a good one. I didn't realize. So apparently, you know about this whole report card thing, right? We all know that.
Oh yeah. They did well this year.
Okay, but apparently they got an F for their home field, not advantage, but the actual surface.
Good thing they're not playing on that field anymore.
It's changing anyway, but. Yeah, and what have you heard over the years about that field, and what do you think about it? Now, I can give you my perspective, honestly, of a guy on the field. I could do that, but did that surprise you? Chris wants to know. Who asked us?
No, I think that if you look at the list, it's very clear which teams play on natural grass, which teams play on turf that's kind of new, and then what teams play on turf that's kind of old. The Bills play on turf that's kind of old, even though. Obviously it's not AstroTurf anymore, but it feels like it was 10 years ago that they replaced the turf. I don't think people like playing on that, and I think they're really excited to get across the street and play on natural grass.
The report card, by the way, all B or higher for every single thing for the Bills except for the F on home game field. So even including your coordinators, head coaches, even travel was a B-, which isn't great, but the thing that people have talked about the most.
I was going to say last year travel was, I think, an F. It was really low. So for them to go from that to a B-, growth, that's good. Some of the things that people are often complaining about, it's funny to see the player perception compared to the fan perception. The strength and conditioning staff is something a lot of people are like, oh, the strength and conditioning staff stinks. Nobody's ever healthy. That got a good grade for the Bills. Yep. Ownership got an A for the Bills. That's obviously a good grade. There was a lot of good stuff there.
Okay, I have a question for you that we debated while we were out to dinner. Okay. Let's get your answer on this one. Sean McDermott, I would say, is probably the number one coaching candidate in the market right now, right?
Yeah.
Give me your top 3 landing spots for him next year.
Next year?
Well, don't you think he'll be a head coach next year? Unless you don't.
So no.
Where will he be a head coach next? What are your top 3 spots?
You mean after next year, right?
Yeah, 2027. I mean, next year. He's not coaching this year.
Yeah. So
every team has a head coach right now. I mean, next year when they don't.
Okay, so the first name that I thought of was the Jets, because I don't know if Aaron Glenn will be.
That was my number one.
Was it?
I was the only one of our group that was talking. I was the only one. I said, I think Jets number one.
Okay, yeah, no, I think that.
You know why? Tons of draft capital for the next couple of years.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, yeah, that's a no-brainer to me. So that would be one. 2 would be.
I'll tell you, 3 different people. We were sitting with Perino, Josh Reed, and Chris Trapasso. I think all of them had the same number one. And not me. I had the Jets.
Was their number one? Well, I'm not. I don't think it's not Miami. It's not New England. Obviously, it's not Pittsburgh. It's not Cleveland. They just got a new coach. It's not Baltimore.
Think personal for Sean.
Philly?
That's what they all thought. I'm like, I don't know. Are you sure Sirianni's gone? I mean, I can see Aaron Glenn gone a lot quicker than Sirianni right now.
Yeah, no, I mean, Nick Sirianni won a Super Bowl last year. So that's why I'm like, even if things
Well,
work
they
out-
want to. They went to the Super Bowl a couple years before, and they almost fired him the next year. So
Yeah, that's true.
give me a couple
yeah.
other teams that you could see him fitting in.
I'll
give you a couple I came up with.
I have one more that
Okay,
I
go
think
ahead.
makes sense. Tampa.
Ooh, that was brought up. Yep, that was brought up. Todd Bowles, move on from him for sure.
Yeah.
I could see something like that. We all thought Minnesota could be an option if they eventually move on from Kevin O'Connell after,
That would be so stupid. That would not for like Sean. Why would you ever move on from Kevin O'Connell?
Well, they just moved on from the GM because they totally screwed up the quarterback position.
I know. I don't think that's on Kevin O'Connell.
I know, but I mean, if they don't win next year, I mean, I think I could see that happening. He was really good, but they were not good this year.
I know.
Cincinnati was brought up. I said, what a sneaky one would be for me? The Washington Commanders.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's the Jets, and it's easily the Jets. I think they're in a very similar position to what the Bills were when he got the Bills. They're in this massive playoff drought. It feels like things are helpless. It's a fan base that has been through a ton of torment. Oh, how juicy that would be if he was in the AFC East. Oh, that would be so. It would be so much fun.
Renaissance Man says number 1 is Browns. Here's the problem, Renaissance Man. I thought it would be Browns this year, but they just hired a coach. Unless that coach goes one and done, Todd Monken, it's not going to be them, right? That would be the problem with the Browns. They have a coach they just hired this year. I'll give you another name that you'd say, I think, well, I don't know if they're going to, why would they move on from this guy even after one more year? Because he just did a really good job. Dave Canales, Carolina, Dan Morgan, right?
Yeah, definitely. No, I wholeheartedly agree. That's the first thing that I was thinking about was Carolina, but then I'm like, no, Canales just got them to the playoffs this past year, and he feels like a young ascending coach. So I don't see that happening. I had a question for you.
Okay.
I don't know the answer to. Is he still on the competition committee?
He is not. You cannot be on the competition committee if you're not a head coach or like somebody like executive
actively in the league.
Actively, correct.
Okay, so you actively. Okay, so if he comes,
so Tomlin's no longer on the competition committee either.
So if they come back, do they immediately go back to the competition committee?
No. That gets formulated every year. He'd have to want to be on it, and there would be a process for that. But I don't believe so. I think because it changes over a lot like that. Once you're on it, I think you can stay on it if you want. But you have to probably go through some processes to be on the competition committee. But Sean McDermott is no longer on the competition committee.
I'll tell you what, if you're somebody who lives in Western New York and if you watch Channel 7 for your local news, the other day I made a mistake that I didn't even realize I made because it's so muscle memory at this point. I was on TV and I was getting ready. Dom had his report ready to go from Indianapolis.
And you said Sean McDermott, didn't you?
I said Sean McDermott, and I didn't even know I did it. And then I had a couple messages on Facebook that were like, hey, they were very nice. Yeah. Hey, I'm sure you just slipped up. Force a habit. I was like, what are they talking about? And then I went back and watched it. And I was like, hey, Tom Tippett's is in Indy. The combine is underway. And on the first day, we always hear from the general manager and the head coach. So Dom's got more with Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott. And I just walked away.
A memory to say that.
Like, didn't even really think about it until I checked my phone. So it's just like, not fake news. Sorry. Just genuine mistake.
Stopped myself a few times and I went, so when when Joe was talking, I would literally stop myself a few times. Okay, give us a peek behind the curtain from a TV sports director's standpoint here. You ready for this one? Okay. It is very possible that the Buffalo Sabres, for the first time in 14 years, could be playing a playoff game the night of the first round of the NFL draft. How do you handle that as the sports director of WKBW TV Channel 7, Matt Beauvais? I
have already prepared for this and have thought about this and have had extensive conversations about this. If they are playing on the same night, Dom will cover the Sabres and I will cover the Bills.
Whether it's home or away?
Whether it's home or away.
Okay.
Now, the explanation here is the NFL draft is on ABC. That will come with at least a 30-minute pregame show or a pre-draft show, and then probably a post-draft show, which is certainly something Dom is capable of doing. But if I'm always the one in the driver's seat, it doesn't feel like now would be the time to take myself out of the driver's seat from doing that just because the Sabres are in the playoffs. You want to talk about FOMO. me, a hockey guy, I would have substantial FOMO if I was not in the arena when the Sabres were playing a playoff game, but that would just be the world that we live in. Now, the caveat here is if they don't have a first-round pick, that probably changes because the night is very, very different. But if they have a first-round pick, I'm assuming I'm going to be the one who's at One Bills Drive, and Dom will be the one wherever the Sabres are playing.
I would say the other piece of this would be, correct me if I'm wrong, but because you cover the Bills so much, that Dom does more of the Sabres work generally, right? Like, isn't he the guy in your sports department that kind of covers them a little bit more? Maybe not more, maybe more is the wrong word, but that's kind of like more of what he does.
I think there's this, you're not wrong, but because I'm a hockey sicko, I'm probably around not more than Dom, but more than you would expect. I don't know. I don't want to like oversell it. It's not like I'm at the rink all the time. I do not miss Sabres games. Like whether I am in the arena or on TV, I do not miss Sabres games. So yeah, I mean, I think that does make sense for a long time. And I don't think this is how it should be. But for a long time in a traditional television setup, your main person covers usually the Bills. And then your secondary person usually covers the Sabres and helps with the Bills. We have the two of us. So it's very much, he does a ton of Bills. We both do a ton of Sabres because we both need to. And then everything else just kind of trickles down that way. So yeah, that would be a weird juggling act. I guess the only other thing that could happen is if it was a deciding game, that might change things. Like, I don't think it could be. I think there's like 5 or 6 days from when the regular season ends to when the draft is. So it would probably only be game 1 or game 2. So in that instance, if the Sabres are on the road and they're in Montreal, Dom's in Montreal and I'm in Orchard Park. It would eat at me to not be there, but that's the reality of it.
I have 2 questions from somebody here who thinks they're trolling me, but they're not. But I'm going to actually answer these questions from him or her. BG 1593. Sal, should we give Cam Lewis a lifetime contract? He's up for Cam Lewis. The answer is no, but I do think the Bills should try to sign Cam Lewis, re-sign him. He's a guy that does everything. That's what you want. He can play safety. He can play nickel. Why would you not want a guy like that in your team? I think he's kind of a good fit for Jim Leonhard and still be a depth piece. So thank you, BG. And the second question from BG is, Sal, why do Syracuse sports suck so much? Well, there is an answer for that. In football, they don't put the resources in because they went to the ACC and it's tough to compete with all these schools down south and everything. But Fran Brown's doing a nice job. They lost Evangeli, their quarterback, last year, and that killed them, or else they were on the right track. But in basketball, the answer is simple. They don't have the right coach. Right out, Adrian Autry is going to get fired. It pains me, Matt, that Adrian Autry is going to get fired because I went to school with him. I love him, but he's not the right coach. You just know when he's not the right coach. And they're going to have to fire him. And they have a blank canvas. Like, just go hire the best coach. Please don't just say this guy played for us, so go bring him back home. Please don't do that.
Yeah, no, definitely not. I know so little about college basketball right now. You could have told me that Syracuse was the best team in the country, and I would have been like, oh, cool. Or you could have told me, that name you just said, I've heard before, but I don't know anything about him.
Are you going to go to the NCAA tournament?
I will, but the last time the NCAA tournament was here was also right when the Bills signed Von Miller, and the press conference for Von being introduced was the same day as the first day of the tournament, the Thursday. So
yes, that's right. It was also during the middle of a snowstorm they had here. By the way.
Not when they signed him. When they introduced him, they introduced Von Miller and Tim Settle in the stadium press conference room because so many people were covering it. And I was like, dang, I really want to be down at the arena right now watching college basketball March Madness, but we, of course, have to be there for Von Miller. So I went to Von Miller's press conference, then drove to the arena and basically worked at the arena on Von Miller stuff while watching college basketball.
I didn't mean to cut you off. You said, I saw something. You said, I saw. We're talking about Syracuse. Then you said, I saw.
ESPN was on. Did Syracuse just played North Carolina?
Yes.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, I thought Syracuse was good because it shows their record. And they weren't good. And I was like, oh, North Carolina's still good. That's interesting. That's cool. I'm not nearly into the domino effect here is that because the Sabres are good, relatively speaking,
Yeah.
I am now so much more invested in the
I love it.
NHL than I have been in a long time. When we're done with this podcast, I'm watching the Panthers and
Dude,
Leafs.
scoreboard watching tonight like
Your
crazy.
scoreboard watch because
Yes.
the Sabres play the Panthers tomorrow night. So I'm like, okay, I want to see how this all plays out, whatever. So that's a very fun element of the Sabres being back in this. 24 games left, Sale. They got to win 12. If they win 12, they're going to the playoffs. That gets you to 96 points without any loser points. So if you go, I should give this person credit, but somebody was like, if you go 13-9-2 down the stretch, that's 13-11. You have 100 points. 100 points is getting into the playoffs.
I'm excited. I don't want to get too excited because I don't want to be heartbroken.
Yeah, because it feels like in a blink of an eye they could go on a 4-game losing streak.
Yeah. So went to dinner last night in Indy, and then when we left, went to a place called Kilroy's. Really nice. A lot of TVs in this sports bar. We walk in and it's basketball everywhere, right? College, NBA, which I get. It's Indiana. It's basketball state. And I said to the server, I said, I'm really sorry. I don't know if you get this question a lot, but could you put a hockey game on for us? She goes, what game do you want? I said, New Jersey Devils, Buffalo Sabres. A few minutes later, she said, yeah, I got the game on for you. Bam, it was right there. We got like one hockey game in the middle of this huge bar, but we all sat there watching. Tage scores. And I'm like, yeah. And like, everybody's looking like, what's this guy cheering about? Because there's basketball on and nobody's
of course
really paying attention. But, you know, I mean, dialed in, baby, right? You're in Indianapolis and got to find the Sabres game somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's just been fun to, like I've got to go an away party for a colleague. Shout out Taylor Epps on Saturday. She's moving to Baltimore, and the party is Saturday at 6:30. And I legitimately needed to think to myself, I got to find a way to get the Sabres game on.
Yep.
At just a random bar on a Saturday night, so I can be paying attention.
Amazing.
It's fun. It's fun that this is a conversation we're having.
Okay. Anything else? We've gone for over an hour. We appreciate it. There's a little issue with X and how we do the show via StreamYard, but we think we did it right enough that we had 2,500 live viewers, which is really nice.
Yeah, which is great. I mean, considering this is just a random Thursday in the end of February. So thank you if you've been watching or listening to us.
And of course, you can always listen and go rewatch on at Cell Sports on YouTube.
We're getting ready for, even though it's going to, I would imagine this next week is fairly quiet, but then it'll start to pick up. I think by the end of next week, we'll start to hear about some players the Bills are moving on from. And obviously the legal tampering window opens on Monday, March 9th at noon.
From Monday, yeah.
That's going to be the day that from March 9th until March 12th is going to be when it's its busiest. And that's when we'll be talking about, the free agents that they bring in and probably the guys that they move on from.
We will talk a lot more to you about the Buffalo Bills and probably even some Buffalo Sabres along the way. Sorry, folks. It just happens. You got a couple of Buffalo guys here who are really enjoying this ride and this run they're on. In the meantime, thanks a lot to Mike Robier, our producer. Check us out at X Sal Sports, Matt _Bove, and of course, Sal Sports on YouTube, wherever you pod.